1, 2, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, testing.
Okay, I'm back on demo.
YS, your audio is crackling again.
It's crackling again.
Yeah, it's
How
the
about now?
same.
How about
Still
now?
crackling. Still crackling.
So I heard you are in Florida. Is that correct, Mr. Chi?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And Hannah, you are in New York?
Mhm.
Okay, great. What's the weather like there?
It's really nice out today, actually. In New York, 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Great.
Oh my God, what happened?
Okay, maybe shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. So let's wait just a few seconds so that everybody is in. Okay, before we start, let me make a quick announcement. This is our 5th talk in the ShaRing Colloquium series, and I'd like to suggest that the audience, if you have any questions, we'll have Q&A sessions at the end of the talk, maybe after 50 minutes of Mr. Chi's talk. And then you can either ask your questions on the chat board, or you can speak directly to your microphone. Okay, let me start this talk by introducing Mr. Chi. Mr. Y.S. Chi is the chairman of Elsevier, the world's leading scientific, technical, and medical information and analytics company. He's also the director of corporate affairs for Elsevier parent company, Relics, which provides data analytics solutions to customers across multiple business sectors. Having worked in this industry for many years, YS frequently delivered thought leadership on key trends in data and AI. He also travels regularly, normally 300 days out of the year, which is kind of amazing to me, to engage with industry stakeholders and advise boards and trade groups. Over the past few years, YS has also served as a distinguished visiting professor at our competition, KAIST College of Business, where he teaches a course on data analytics for business. Without further ado, it's really a great honor to introduce Mr. Chi. Mr. Chi?
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all staying very healthy throughout this pandemic. Thank you, Jung-woo, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. For the rest of the audience, I have a very special fondness for the theme of this speaker series, Shannon Meets Turing, which actually did happen in Washington, D.C. Actually, it wasn't in D.C. In 1943 at a cafeteria at Bell Labs over an English tea. They actually met. And that's, I think, where Jung-woo, you were working for a while as a fellow, right?
Yes, correct.
I also just learned that early in their careers, both Claude Shannon and Alan Turing conducted research in Princeton, New Jersey, where Jung-woo and I also went to school.
Yeah, we have a mutual connection there.
Of course, I was only an undergraduate, and the rest of the people were much smarter graduate students or fellows. Yeah. And yet we are from a very different era, of course. They missed each other by just 2 years. I can only imagine what they would have accomplished had they gotten the chance to work together. It would have been amazing. Anyway, speaking of accomplishments, it is a great honor to have shared this virtual stage with other speakers like Professor Levine, Lena Vojta, Professor O, and Professor Welling, who have lectured over the past month. These speakers gave us very rich behind-the-scenes look at the current state of data science, and these presentations have reminded me of the highly technical work required to create the database tools we rely on today. Now, for example, robotic assembly lines are now the norm in vehicle and technology manufacturing. Yet, Professor Levine's presentation illuminated just how challenging it can be to train these machines offline without constantly tweaking their data sets. In a similar way, in this age of globalization, we have all come to rely on tools like Google Translate to communicate across borders. Lena demonstrated how engineers are overcoming the complexity of human linguistics, teaching machines to use context clues just like humans. But the applications of these projects are not always as visible as robots and Google Translate. Professor O explained how difficult it is to generate robust estimates from large data sets without sacrificing data privacy. These types of statistics are incredibly useful in business, in government, and in education. Yet many people do not realize how challenging they are to produce. Luckily for all of us, researchers keep innovating despite the difficulty of working with data, creating new tools to benefit people worldwide. And just last week, Professor Welling proposed exciting new scientific applications of machine learning, such as developing carbon capture technology, biodegradable materials, new vaccines, and even immunotherapy for cancer patients. So these research projects are all truly remarkable and have reminded me why colloquia like this one are so important. They bridge the gap between data research and data applications, between research and application. And as someone in the business of data analytics, I and my colleagues work with the outcomes of this type of research every day. But it is not often that I get to hear firsthand the science behind these database tools. Of course, so much of their sharing have gone way over my head already. So thank you again to my fellow presenters, and thank you all for listening, because my talk will sound a little bit different than these first four. Now, as I'm sure you have already figured out, I cannot contribute any scholarly additions to the topic of big data. But what I can do is to approach the theme from application standpoint and show you how regular people like me use data to improve the everyday lives of other people. So let me tell you a little bit about the company where I work and why I was invited to speak here today. My company, Relix, is a data analytics company that runs 4 distinct business units: Elsevier, LexisNexis Legal, LexisNexis Risk, and Read Exhibitions. Together, these 4 sectors cover almost every industry imaginable, from education to insurance, aviation, agriculture, government, healthcare, scientific research, and even esports. The list extends very broadly, and yet all of our business sectors have one key element in common. They provide data-based solutions to our customers, helping people worldwide make better informed decisions with confidence. Today, I will dive deeper into just 2 of these data analytics applications, using them as examples to illuminate our company's broad data strategy. And I will show you the entire process of creating these tools, from data collection to analytics, and finally explaining how they benefit the real customers worldwide. Now, of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions about our other products, but after my presentation. So before we begin, I want to warn you that when explaining Relix's products and strategies, I often use analogies about food, or sometimes sports. These 2 things are the things that I love the most, and anyone can relate to them too. Just as chefs use ingredients to cook unique dishes, we use data as our ingredients to create innovative solutions for our customers. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, I would like to share a story about one of my favorite chefs that aligns extremely well with Relix's data strategy. I'm sure you have all heard of David Chang. He might be the most famous Korean American chef of all time. Well, you might be surprised to know that David did not set out to work in restaurants. In fact, after he graduated from a liberal arts college, David spent years teaching in Japan and working on Wall Street. He didn't kick off his culinary career until his mid-20s, when he enrolled in the French Culinary Institute. And now, after just 20 years working in the restaurant industry, David has become more than just a chef. With more than a dozen restaurants around the world, 2 Netflix shows, a podcast, and multiple cookbooks, he is an international celebrity. So how did David achieve such great success in such a short period of time? I believe there are 3 elements that explain David's strategy that allowed him to reach the top of culinary pyramid so quickly. And as I'm sure you have guessed, these are elements that are also critical to our company data strategy, which I'll explain later in greater detail. First, David collects his ingredients with great care. He uses local and sustainable ingredients at all of his restaurants. He has partnerships with countless farmers who send him daily shipments of fresh produce, organic meats, and homemade cheeses. So by collecting the very, very best supplies from every best source, David sets himself up for success. Second, he curates remarkable dishes from these raw ingredients to make sure that the food is accessible to everyone, from restaurant critics to children. David is not the type of chef to simply grill a steak and call it a day. Instead, he combines local ingredients with his talented staff to create innovative and delicious dishes, often merging traditional Korean recipes with modern methods of cooking. But David's creations are not just for the rich and famous. Anyone can enjoy his food, even people who might not consider themselves foodies. His restaurants are accessible to all palates and price ranges, from the Michelin star tasting menu at Momofuku to affordable fried chicken at Fuku, to sweet treats for kids at Milk Bar. Now, by curating unique dishes that anyone can eat, David set his restaurants apart from his competitors. And finally, using this recipe for success, David catalyzes customer satisfaction by spreading his food around the world. As you know, he did not stop after opening his first restaurant called Momofuku Noodle Bar. Today, you can eat David's food in New York, Sydney, Toronto, Washington, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. And for those of you at home in Korea, you can still enjoy his creations because David went one step further in spreading his food worldwide, releasing multiple cookbooks so that you can create your favorite Momofuku dishes right at your own home. This catalyzing step was essential in elevating David from a well-known New York City chef to an international superstar. So by collecting local ingredients and talent, curating impressive dishes accessible to all budgets, and catalyzing the impact of his food by spreading it around the world, David was able to really put a visible stamp on the restaurant industry. So, how exactly does David's story relate to us? And more broadly, the application of data in business world? Well, the elements behind David's success are also strategies we use at RELX when thinking about our big data and AI. I like to call these strategies the 3 C's: collect, curate, and catalyze. First, we collect data from internal and external sources, making sure to store it ethically and privately. Second, we curate these huge data sets into insights that are actionable and easy to understand, even if you're not a data expert. And finally, number 3, we use our data products to catalyze real benefits, offering efficient and reliable solutions to our customers. Just as David Chang used these 3 strategies to completely switch industries and become a leader in the restaurant world, we use the 3 C's to succeed in this new industry of data analytics. And to explain better what I mean by the 3 C's, I'd like to take you on a data journey. As I mentioned earlier, we'll follow 2 of RELX's most cutting-edge data solutions from the data collection stage all the way to their real life uses. That way, I won't just be telling you about our strategy, you can see it in action. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a brief overview about each of these products. The first one we're going to use is called ShaRing. It actually used to be called Flight Global, but we just recently changed the name to ShaRing. It's a standalone aviation business within LexisNexis Risk Solution. The ShaRing uses a massive database of flight information to offer dozens of curated solutions to aviation stakeholders like airlines, airports, governments, travel agencies, and even banks who finance the aircrafts. Essentially, if you are looking for any database support tool related to airplanes, we've got it. The second product from our family of companies that I want to share with you today is called Elsevier Clinical Solutions. It's operated by Healthcare and Medical Division of Elsevier. Again, this product is not a single tool, but rather a collection of database solutions. And our clinical solutions are used by doctors, nurses, caregivers, and students to improve patient outcomes and educate our future frontline health workers. Of course, both of these products are very relevant today, as you know. Over these past 2 years, ShaRing has grappled with COVID-related flight cancellations and increasingly frequent extreme weather events. And our clinical solutions team has been working on overdrive through the pandemic, helping hospitals and medical professionals take care of COVID patients and understand this disease. So, by learning how our ShaRing and clinical solutions teams collect data, curate insights, and catalyze benefits, I hope that you will gain a better understanding of how any company can use data to produce positive outcomes. Without further ado, let's start with the step one, collect. At RELX, our leadership in data analytics starts with preparation. Before we can benefit from our data, we need to do two things. First, just as David Chang must gather ingredients before cooking, we need to actually go out there and collect the data. And second, once we collect it, we have to make sure that we are storing it ethically and privately. Getting this first step right is essential in creating successful data tools, as data collection sets the foundation for all of our other work. Let's go back to ShaRing and see how this step looks in real life. Now, David Chang made sure that his ingredients are sourced from partners he trusts. So do we. We make sure our data ingredients are sourced from partners that we can trust, except instead of organic farmers, we partner with top players in the industry. ShaRing receives data from over 2,000 sources, including airlines, airports, governments, and equipment manufacturers. And different types of sources give us different types of data. We have information on flight schedules, we have information on details of specific airplanes, customer purchasing patterns, and much more. We compile all these data into something called ShaRing Core, which is an enormous data set with information on 970 airlines, 17,000 airports, and 400,000 aircraft. The core also contains data on global events, weather, airplane traffic, alerts for hazards, and even ticket prices. Altogether, there's more than 300 terabytes worth of data in the core. So how do we keep
Mr.
Sorry about
Cheese?
that. I think Wes will come back shortly.
Yeah, there's a network connection is a bit unstable. Can you hear me? Hannah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think YS is refreshing his Wi-Fi and coming back. Sorry about that.
Okay. So maybe we can roll back a few.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can repeat. Could you maybe relay a message, maybe text message to him?
Yep.
In case he's not aware.
He's trying to reconnect right now.
Can you hear me again?
Yes. There was a brief interruption of internet, so maybe you can.
Yeah, I apologize. I had an internet. I think there was a thunderstorm here. I apologize. So let me go back to tell you about 300 terabytes of data. So how do we keep 300 terabytes worth of data safe while we make sure that it is ethically sourced and it's accurate? Well, ShaRing has a dedicated team of 40 quality assurance process to make sure that the data is accurate. Some of the things that they do are duplicate data, any kind of improper formatting, and looking for outliers. So on any given day, can you believe this? They actually throw away close to 17 million invalid items from the data set. And ShaRing also has a separate team of privacy and security professionals who use encryption of our files so that personal data cannot be accessed or abused. Now, of course, we strictly follow all local laws and regulations to make sure that we follow the local practices. But our data suppliers appreciate that we go above and beyond what the law requires, and this has allowed us to cultivate very meaningful and long-lasting partnerships with those people who provide us the data. So, by collecting accurate and secure data from thousands of sources, our ShaRing team has been able to build a one-of-a-kind database. Now that makes us a leader in the aviation industry. Let's move on to our second example, Elsevier Clinical Solutions. There you see a slightly different process of data collection. Here, rather than compiling data from external sources, as is the case with ShaRing, we use the information that is already available right in our own back pocket. Elsevier is the world's leading publisher of scientific and medical journals, and these journals include information on 75,000 diseases, 46,000 drugs, 63,000 medical procedures, and 90,000 symptoms. Now, in the eyes of healthcare professionals, our journals are the arsenal of medical information that contains everything they need to know about diagnosis, treatment, and monitoring of patients. So naturally, the data for clinical solutions comes straight from our own collection of journal articles. There is no better place to get medical expertise than our own journals. We use an advanced differential diagnosis algorithm called DDX to scrape data from these articles and identifying key medical terms, concepts, and relationships. And our DDX algorithm can even understand images like flow charts and medical diagrams. So at Clinical Solutions, upholding data privacy is less challenging than it is for our ShaRing team, because all of these medical articles are already published for anyone to read. But we still work to maintain the highest standard of accuracy in our Clinical Solution product by actively fighting for false data before it occurs. For example, we have introduced human oversight to a DDX algorithm so that professional doctors and scientists can manually add relationship tags to certain content. That way, our algorithm can learn from subject matter experts and correct any potential mistake. Of course, that also means that all machine learning tools has risk of implicit bias in the algorithm. Even DDX algorithm, which learns from humans that build them, can have human biases. And we all know that humans are not always objective. And to combat this risk, we established something called Bias in AI Working Group, which actively works to fight implicit bias in all of Elsevier products. So at RELX, we work to collect the most comprehensive data possible to inform our solutions. And all the while, we maintain the highest standard of accuracy and ethical data use. Now that you've seen some of the ways in which we collect, what comes next? Collecting data is only one piece of the puzzle. If you want the data to be useful, you have to analyze it. And that's where curating comes in. We call this step curating, not because we pick and choose which data point to show customers, but because we carefully craft products using all the data at our disposal. No one wants to pay for a raw data set full of ones and zeros. Nobody does. Instead, people want results that are easy to understand. So we work very hard to analyze our data and present it to our client. When we present it, it is easy enough for beginners to benefit from our insights. Just as David Chang ensured that his food was accessible to a wide variety of palates and budgets, we use our data ingredients to create dishes that suit all of our customer needs. As an example, let's look at the curation stage of ShaRing's data journey. The ShaRing core database is one of a kind. It's the only database that has all these things together. But that doesn't mean that our work stops there. Our experts have to analyze this huge data set so that others don't have to do it. And by curating it into tools that fit our customers' needs. Using just one database, the data team creates countless solutions. Here are some examples. We create solutions around scheduling assistance, around search functions for flight path, passenger behavior analytics, pricing analyses, and detailed airline reports. I am proud to say that ShaRing also provides free insights to the public because we want the whole world to benefit from our unique data sets. So ShaRing's direct releases free reports and forecasts about trends in the airline industry, allowing everyone to see what the ShaRing core has to offer. On the other side, at Clinical Solution, we use a single data set to curate many different tools also. The data that Clinical Solution team scrapes from Elsevier Journal drives three types of application. The first is that we give search service. This allows medical professionals to very quickly find information that would otherwise take hours to locate. So as an example, they can simply type symptoms into our clinical tool, key tool, and within seconds, find information needed to diagnose a patient. Secondly, we offer recommendation service for algorithms that support doctors' decisions. Under our clinical path tool, which is specific to cancer care, we can recommend treatment path based on each patient's unique needs. And finally, we offer educational service to help train the next generation of healthcare professionals. As an example, our nursing skills platform provides standardized training to nursing students, and its web-based format has made it even more in demand. In fact, in Korea, more than 70% of nursing schools have already deployed this nursing skills platform since COVID emerged. And Seoul National University Hospital is partnering with us to develop 2 new training skills in Korean. I could give you countless examples of data-driven products. As I just described, the same data set can be used for multiple purposes. You go back to the same ingredients to create different dishes. I'm not here to simply list RELX's many products. Instead, I hope that these 2 examples can inspire you about how to curate actionable insights from the data that you already have in your hand. And I believe that the future of data analytics for business lies in the curation step. And that curation step uses all the technology that the other four speakers explained. So by now, I hope you feel like you understand how Relics is using data. The final strategy relates to the actual benefits that come from data. In other words, answering the question, why do we use data? Why do we use data? Using our data tools, we work to catalyze the true benefits for our customers or their customers, and then the world at large. If you remember my story, David Chang did not stop after opening a few restaurants. Instead, he opened restaurants around the world, wrote cookbooks, created SNS material and other online material so that everyone can access his food. So just as David spread his wisdom and talent with no boundaries, we use our data in all aspects of our business to incorporate into different benefits. Our data has two main benefits. One benefit is reliability. The second benefit is efficiency. In terms of reliability, each of our databases contain comprehensive information on a certain business vertical. And it is so much data that no other human can collect alone. So when our customers use our solution, they know that they don't have to, we didn't leave out anything that is really needed. And then in terms of efficiency, our analytics teams make sure that this data is actually actionable, actually easy to understand, so that our customers can immediately benefit from the knowledge. We do work very hard to catalyze these two positive outcomes, spreading the wealth of our data across all the businesses and tools. You don't have to take my word for it. Let me show you exactly how they benefit the world. Let's start with reliability and go back to ShaRing. Our trusted flight solutions provider, right? There's one ShaRing solution in which reliability is particularly important, as it deals with one of the most dreaded and dangerous elements of air travel called turbulence. Tell me, how many of you have experienced the discomfort and stress when the airplane you're in is going through big turbulence? Well, turbulence is not just an inconvenience to passengers. It can actually disrupt the entire afternoon of flight schedule, push the military planes off the course, and put a huge burden on pilots and flight attendants who cannot get on their next flights. So ShaRing partnered with IATA to create the cloud-based turbulence-aware platform, which is the first product of its kind to compile real-time turbulence reporting from the airplanes. Pilots will then use this tool to identify locations with poor weather conditions and reroute their flight path according to that, making sure the safety of the passenger and crew. And this is what we mean by reliable tool, right? Because it is real time. Another example of reliability comes from our clinical solutions cancer treatment. The clinical path uses evidence from thousands of cancer treatment scenarios. And this solution is reliable for a couple of reasons. One, it gives patients the highest probability of success factor. And two, cancer patients who are treated on path, which is what we call a standardized treatment plan, are actually less likely to have surprise emergency rooms. We have a study that found that in a group of stage 2 breast cancer patients, 19% of those who were treated off the standard path made an unplanned hospital visit. But with those who were on path treatment, only 12% had to go to emergency room. Now, to you, maybe that's 7.
I will tell him that he's freezing again.
Brief interruption. Just hold on a few seconds. So he's back. Mr. Chi, can you hear me? There was a brief interruption. Mr. Chi, can you hear me? Or Hannah?
Well, I can hear you very well.
Oh, okay. There was like about 1 minute interruption due to some network connection.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Can I resume where I left off?
Yeah. Can you maybe roll back a minute and then start from there?
Yeah, sure, I will. So I was talking about the difference between 19% and 12%, right? If you're off path, it's 19%. If you're on path treatment, you're 12%. So some of you might think that 7% is not a big deal. Well, imagine if that 7% is you or your loved one. It means everything, the extra 7%. So the reliability is not the only benefit that database solutions provide. These tools are also effective at guaranteeing efficiency. And efficiency is all about saving time, saving money, and saving other resources. And data is excellent at doing that. Just looking at ShaRing one last time to show what I mean. Have any of you ever carefully tracked your location on a flight on your screen while you were flying, only to find out that you reached your airport, but the plane simply seems to be circling around the airport? Well, I have had more than 100 times happen to me. There's nothing more frustrating than just circling around in midair. In the airport lingo, this queuing is called stack holding, and it is inefficient on many levels. So what ShaRing did is they partnered with NATS in the UK, which is a traffic control provider, to demonstrate how we can reduce stack holding over London Heathrow Airport. And NATS implemented our solution in 2016. And as a result, Heathrow has already saved over 8,000 tons of carbon dioxide and over 1.65 million in costs. As you can see, the solution produced both economic and environmental saving. Talk about efficiency, right? And because we must also follow clinical solutions to the last stage in its data journey, I want to give you one final example of efficiency in healthcare. We created Clinical Key, which is a data mining search engine that allows doctors to search within our journal articles using keywords, symptoms, diseases, and drugs. It allows these searches to take place while standing right in front of the patient, wasting no time, right? And it saves lives, not just time, but it saves lives. So I hope that these examples from both ShaRing and clinical solutions have shown you how data, when applied to business, can create reliability and efficiency. Of course, these qualities are essential in any industry, not just aviation and healthcare. In order for everyone to benefit from data-driven reliability and efficiency, we must work hard to catalyze these benefits. And we move one step closer to reaching this point every day. So now we have arrived at the end of our data journey. I trust that you've gained a better understanding of how companies like ours use data. And every day we create larger data sets, we apply more analytics capability in curation, and we make sure we disseminate more by catalyzing it. Just as the chef that we told you about has done in terms of innovation, that's how we innovate in our company. And as you know, the world is facing so many challenges. Our pandemic is still here. The climate change is not getting any better. The world of geopolitics is getting more polarized. And so I think that it's very important that private sector like us uses as much data as possible to help solve problems. So I want to finish by focusing on 3 C's again: collect, curate, and catalyze. This is how we think of it in all of our data challenges. But before I open up for any questions, let me remind you of something I did not talk about at all. And that is, none of this happens without people. It is done by people still. Even the machine is run by people. So we always prioritize our people to listen to our customers. So let me stop there. Thank you for listening. Apologize for the technical difficulties. And I hope that I will have some questions from you.
Okay, thanks for great speech. Are there any questions from the audience? Maybe while we are waiting, let me ask you just one kind of question out of curiosity.
Sure.
Maybe you can recall that there was an AI engine a few years ago announced from IBM called Watson.
Yeah.
And I was kind of told that it actually searches through all the medical journals to get like clinical information to get some sort of a final diagnosis.
Yeah.
And because Elsevier is very well known in its collection of like medical journals in this like portfolios, wonder if maybe Elsevier or Relics have any kind of strategy to go into that kind of, developing such an AI-like services?
Yeah, so, I think that what IBM tried to do is to create what we have called DDX as well, right? They decided to make enormous investment in healthcare industry. And for Watson is nothing but a kind of a operating system, right? It's an operating system. And we have one of our own. Ours is called HPCC. And it was actually developed because of an insurance business that we were in. It actually stands for high power cluster computing. And we were in the business of trying to figure out how to save money on insurance premium. So what happens in today's world is that because the insurance company doesn't know enough about you and your driving habit, they tend to price everything on average a little bit higher than they should, because they don't know exactly who's a good driver and who's not a good driver. So by knowing a lot more data, they can make precise pricing for you, Jung-woo, differently from me, different from Hannah, and so on. And to run all that data, they needed to collect all the data from each other, all the insurance companies in America, all thousands of them. We were selected to be the company that would independently hold all the data because none of the insurance company wanted to share each other's secret data. And they contributed to us. We mixed it all together and we gave it back, right? So what happened is that good drivers like me, I pay less insurance now. And bad drivers pay a lot more. That's more precise pricing. Well, that HPCC is now being used for what I just described in clinical path. It is actually the engine behind. So your question is exactly correct. Okay. We have it, we use it. So we use HPCC as an operating system to handle terabytes of data, but it's DDX, which is the intelligence that curates the relationship between different data. Yeah. So we do have it. And by the way, I think from what I understand, IBM has given up on the Watson's healthcare sector.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's what I'm understanding, because I think they realize that they are constantly getting data from other people. And whereas people like us, we have our own data that we create every day anyway, right? So they've decided that was not, that they're going to go into a narrower things, like they might go into just neuroscience or brain cancer and things like that, but they're not doing across all of medicine.
Okay. I wondered whether your company is using like outside cloud resources other than like internal. Is it confidential? You don't have to answer.
No. We use both. We have a farm. We have a farm of computers outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where HPCC is residing. But we also use the cloud for certain data that we feel are okay security-wise to keep there. But other data we keep inside our own, yes.
Okay.
By the way, if anybody wants to ask a question in Korean, I can take the question in Korean too. Okay. I will answer in English though. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your speech. I think your analogy to the chef really helped me understand a lot better. I just had a few questions. So you talked about how different countries might have different regulations on how they can collect data. And I know that South Korea is a lot more lax in terms of data collection compared to places like the EU. And I was wondering if there was a difference in the quality of the data that you could collect based on these different regulations and laws.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Quality of data is not dependent on the regulations, but regulations tell us what we are allowed to collect, what we are allowed to keep, and what we are allowed to use, right? And who is allowed to use it. So the quality of data coming from Korea, for example, is amazingly good. I mean, it's unbelievable how well structured the data is in Korea, whether it comes from Coupang or whether it comes from a bank or whether it comes from Kakao Taxi. I mean, it's amazing. It's really high quality. However, Korea is just as worried about privacy, and it does restrict us quite heavily on what we can do with it. So we have to first anonymize everything. And inside our company, we have a way of giving an identification tag to a person. And then we erase the identity and keep a key somewhere else where nobody can touch it. And then we run all of the rest of our analytics, the curation, without the name attached to it, right? So that's what we have to do. That's how we have to get over the regulations. EU, Europe has come up with some of the most comprehensive rules. And we actually support that rule because we are a company that will live with good law. And many companies do not do that. And we would like those companies not to exist because they're bad companies. And we like to compete with good companies, not with bad companies that have shortcuts. So yes, and Jane, it's not that obvious. It is really country by country, and sometimes even countries like China, which just propagated its new rule this month, it's not clear whether they're going to actually enforce it. So we have to learn by doing it. And sometimes we will do it and we'll tell the government, this is what we did. Can we keep doing it? Now, you notice this is very different from Google. This is very different from Facebook. There, they just do it until they get caught. We don't do that. We call ourselves a company, data for good company. We will only use data to do good for the society. We will not ever sell data. We will not sell data. There will be no advertising, no marketing, nothing, but we will use the data to save lives, to catch criminals, to prevent accidents. That we will do. And so we are actually encouraging regulations, yes.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
that
much.
question.
Thank you. Just for the audience, if you have any questions, you can even ask yours in Korean or ask your questions on chat board. Or another good method is that push that button of raise hand, that icon. I think there's one.
Yeah, do we have Akinkumi has a question?
Okay, please go ahead, Akinkumi.
Yes, good day. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Well, I'm well convinced about the things you have shared, but I just have 2 questions. And I hope you will be able to find answers, but that's not necessary. It's part of my curiosity. Now, first, a data is as good as the collection process. In all of these algorithms that your organization has designed, were there any data verification process that you adopted? Because putting the data into an algorithm when they are not verifiable could be misleading, and you have alluded to that in your presentation. Algorithms that are biased as humans as well. The second thing is this. Based on the clinical evidence you have provided, which is a very good one, the question for me, who is in healthcare, epidemiology, and science, is the fact that the goal is to prevent diseases. Because immediately disease onset, the questions relating to morbidity and the cost impair so much on the health and well-being of population. So in the near future, is your organization looking at prognostic approaches for healthcare delivery, such that a simple patient checkup in the hospital could provide a lot of information that could be advisory, that could serve as advisory for disease prevention, and you can promote good quality of life, longevity of life, and things like that. So thank you. I hope my questions are not too much. Thank you.
Yeah, on your first question, we do apply as much rigor in the collecting process to verify the data. Sometimes we don't know the data is either corrupt or even fabricated until it gets caught way down the road. And so we don't profess to be absolutely perfect in our data sets. We don't do that. But we do have 40-step process. So, we hope that the filter will catch almost all of them. But it is always very, very difficult to catch fraudulent data. It's always very, very difficult to catch that. So this data cleansing process is not a one-time thing. It is an ongoing thing. And once we catch a wrong data, we go backward and readjust all of our curation. So I don't want to give you an impression that somehow when we get the data set, it's ready to be perfect. It's not. Okay, it's an ongoing struggle for us. It may be 99.9%, and we still have to make it 99.99% right, and then 99.999% right. So we have to keep going. The better question to answer is your second question about prevention. Yes, that is the way to go. Absolutely. Prevention is the best way, right? That takes a different kind of AI analytics to do, and that is the predictive analytics. It is not the past analytics, it's the predictive analytics. Do we have the technology for that? In some ways, we do, but we don't have all the regulations that allow us to use predictive analytics on health. We can use predictive analytics on insurance, like insurance for your car. We can do predictive analytics on flight pattern. How many flights should go between New York and Seoul? We can do those predictive analytics based on past demand. But on healthcare, there are still enormous amount of regulations that do not allow us to do that. And so we have clinical data that could give people a preventative alert, but I don't think that is socially and regulatorily acceptable today. And by the way, even then, I wouldn't say that we would be able to guarantee somebody. I mean, for example, I wouldn't be able to guarantee that you would not get sick if you go and get COVID vaccine. But I would maybe be able to give you a 70% chance that you'll be okay. That we might, okay? So I just heard that there was a high school boy in Korea who unfortunately died after COVID vaccine because he had previous conditions, immune disease, and he unfortunately passed away. It's possible that we could have given him a predictive probability of bad reaction. Could have, I don't know in that particular case. So yes, you are talking about almost a holy grail in medicine if we can do predictive analytics ahead of time. There are some data and there are many good techniques and technology available, but they are not yet allowed to be combined. I appreciate that question. That was a good question. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? You can use your chat board or ask in Korean if you are uncomfortable in English.
I'm really curious. I'm really curious how many of these people who are in the audience have actually had experience using data sets. I'm really curious. Do you think it's a large group of people who have, or?
I think more than 50% of them are, because it looks like there are mostly undergrad and graduate student in related disciplines. So they may have been taking some courses on machine learning or
Okay.
analytics.
Yeah.
So usually,
I would say that in their careers, I'm now finished with my career pretty soon, but in their careers ahead, I cannot imagine how they will be able to accomplish what they want to do without having deep understanding and capability of the data analytics. I just cannot imagine that. You know how often I say that for that generation, data analytics is as important as for my generation to be able to speak English. I mean,
correct.
It is amazingly essential. And if your background is history and you say, well, that's math and science, it's not. Data analytics is language, it's logics. It's not math, it's not science. The math and science underneath it is not what you do. They give it to you that way. You don't have to be a math scientist at all. But I think that the more you practice using data analytics tools, the better you're going to be ready to solve big problems.
I see.
And when you solve big problems, there are always rewards. Even in business, there are big rewards. So hopefully, go ahead.
I mean, I was wondering, what's your hiring policy for data scientists? Do you hire data scientists?
Yeah, I think we probably have over 3,000 data scientists.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot, yes. I mean, quite a lot, and we need more. We're constantly recruiting, and we don't care where they are. I mean, they could be in Poland, they could be in Chile, they could be in Seoul. We don't care. Data scientists, we just need everywhere. And we want data scientists that are actually interested in the domain expertise, right? So if you're really interested in airplane, or if you're really interested in agriculture, if you're really interested in sports, if you're interested in food, that would be the best of all worlds. Because at the end of the day, data scientists have to marry the real situation with the science behind it together. Otherwise, it's useless. It's like a chef who doesn't know that if you cook onion in hot pot, it will produce sugar. If you don't know that, then and if you're not interested, then you shouldn't be a chef.
Great. Actually, I was in New York City like 3 years ago. I happened to visit that restaurant, Momofuku. I know that. I don't know him personally, but I know he's a great, second generation Korean chef.
This is nothing to do with your class. But,
took him as an example. Yeah.
In May, Michelin Guide came out with the new star guides for this year. And do you know that now we have 7 Korean restaurants with Michelin stars in New York City? 7.
That's great.
That's amazing. K-culture is everywhere. K-pop, K-movie, K-drama, K-dance, K-food now, So it's amazing. It's great. It's wonderful to see people like David, use Korean base, but use modern technology and marry the food. It's great. Anyway.
Actually, speaking of which, I mean, it's totally out of context, but why do you think Western people like these Korean, cultures, K-pops or Korean entertainment at the moment?
My best guess on that, Jang-woo, is that, we as humans, we have 2 opposite poles, right? One pole is to do things that we're familiar with, and the other pole is to do something we never had done before, right? It's the tug of war. And Korean culture, everything from the movies to food and music, is different. It's actually very different from the things that we normally consume in the West. And it doesn't taste like Japanese. It doesn't taste like Chinese. It doesn't taste like Thai food. It is unique. And it is very accessible, right? It's not expensive. It's tasty, and it is actually healthy. So I think it's just great timing now for Korean stuff. But how long that will last depends on how well the Korean culture adapts with other culture. So I think it will be good to see. When you look at second generation Korean Americans that are in the cultural world, they are very, very multicultural. They're Korean inside, they're American outside, and they mix it very, very well.
Okay, so great. Okay, before we finish, do you have any ending comment? Maybe some inspiring messages or
I don't know about
inspiring.
There's a little question from Kyung-han, so we want to just
let us get that question first. Yes, Kyung-han.
Yeah. May I speak in Korean?
Yeah.
I think that would. Yeah. 안녕하세요. 네, 잘 들었고 여쭤볼 게 있어가지고 한 가지 질문이 있습니다. 이 서비스 같은 경우 이 비용이 얼마 정도 책정될지 모르겠는데 보통 이제 대학병원급에서는 이런 서비스가 있으면 사용하기에 좋을 것 같은데 일반 로컬 클리닉에서는 서비스 비용이 얼마나 될지 모르겠지만 너무 비싸면 사용하고 싶어도 사용할 수가 없어서 대학병원과 그런 로컬 클리닉의 그런 지식 격차라고 해야 되나 그런 게 더 커질 수도 있을 것 같다는 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 혹시 나중에 이런 서비스가 로컬 클리닉에서도 쉽게 접할 수 있는지가 궁금하고 그리고 뭐 선진국 같은 경우는 그런 차이가 더 적겠지만 선진국이 아닐 경우에는 뭐 그런 격차가 더 클 것 같은데 이런 부분에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시고 어떻게 나중에 하실 계획인지 궁금합니다.
예, 굉장히 좋은 질문이신데 제가 답은 영어로 할게요. So that's a really, really good question. And you're right that when we come up with products and services like this, it's first intended for large hospitals. But it can still be used by an individual. However, commercially, the way to make this thing accessible, because we're not a B2C company, but we're a B2B company, is to create a consortium. You have to create a consortium and purchase together. That's what has to happen. So in some countries, medical association or for dentist association or association of veterinarians will pull together and purchase the service together, and therefore makes it extremely affordable, even for one small clinic, right? And in some countries, for some of the services, not necessarily for the clinical key or clinical path, there are national contracts where anyone in the country can use it. And Korea, for example, has access to some of our Elsevier's research analytics products as a national contract. So anyone can use it. So there are many different commercial models that can make it affordable to a small clinic, but your question is exactly right. If nothing is done, small clinics will be at a disadvantage to large hospitals. It will happen. And I think that that's a policy issue that has to be tackled at each country level. Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, his question is relevant to what I was going to say to conclude, and that is data can be really good and data can be poison. And one of the key things that people in this room today can do differently than technical people is to become experts in the domain, experts vertically in the sector, right? Because no matter how well machine can analyze, there's still going to be human expertise that has to guide the machine. And even when there is complete machine learning capability, it has to start somewhere. And it almost always starts with human being. And along the way, as the first question asked, there has to be human adjustments. Otherwise, it can go off to the wrong path and never recover. So I would ask all of you who are interested in AI, in machine learning, to not only think of the technology, but to think of domain expertise. I would really, really strongly encourage you to find areas that you care about. And I was saying jokingly earlier that I like to use food and sports analogy, but that's not a joke. It is an area that really interests me. So therefore, application of AI, application of ML is very easy for me in those fields. I hope that you also find those passionate vertical expertise and make sure that you become really good at marrying domain expertise with technology together. And thank you again. Thank you, Jang-woo, for inviting me today.
Yeah, thanks for your great talk. And maybe it's about time to maybe finish because it's a bit late, I guess, in East Coast. Thanks for spending your valuable time with us. It's a great talk and hope to see you soon.
I hope to be in Korea soon. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for everyone. Thanks.